today we're going to be looking at something that everyone does. That's right, daily routines.
Hmm. The everyday, the mundane, the stuff we take for granted until it's disrupted.
Exactly. But, there's actually a whole lot more to daily routines than meets the eye, especially when you think about the language we use to describe them.
Oh, absolutely. The way we talk about our routines can reveal a lot about us. It's like a window into our priorities, our personality, even our cultural background.
And that's what we're going to be exploring today, right? I mean, like how those seemingly simple sentences like, I wake up at 7 or I make coffee before work.
Can actually be packed with information.
So let's dive right in. The first article starts off with a personal account of someone's typical day. It's like a little story. I wake up at 6 o'clock, I get up at 6:50, I make a cup of tea and iron my clothes.
It paints a picture, doesn't it? And it's interesting how many phrasal verbs pop up right away.
Phrasal verbs? Oh, you mean those multi-word verbs like tidy up, wash up, and yeah, get up.
Exactly. They're super common in spoken English, but they can be a bit of a headache for language learners. Their meanings aren't always obvious just from the individual words.
Yeah, they're like little puzzles you have to figure out, right? And this article is full of them. I also noticed a lot of sentences using supporting verbs like I have lunch instead of just I lunch.
Ah, yes, the supporting verbs. It's a subtle difference, but adds a touch more formality to the language.
Like you're putting on your Sunday best to talk about your Tuesday morning.
Uh-huh, exactly. But it is interesting, right? It's like we instinctively elevate our language a bit when talking about routines.
That's something to think about. And then there's the whole time element. I mean, the article uses a bunch of different ways to express time, like at 6 o'clock in the morning, before dinner. It's like even these simple time phrases can tell a story.
Oh, for sure. The way someone chooses to express time can say a lot about their personality and perspective. Someone who uses very specific times might be very schedule-oriented, while someone who uses broader terms like morning or evening might have a more relaxed approach.
It's like a little clue to their organizational style just from how they tell us when they eat breakfast.
Fascinating, right? Okay, so the first article really gets into the nitty-gritty of the language.
Right. But then we've got this second article, How to Describe Your Daily Routine in English. And it takes a slightly different approach. It's more about, well, how to structure a whole narrative about your day.
Like building a story instead of just listing activities?
Yeah.
Okay, I like where this is going. Exactly. It goes beyond just the individual sentences and shows you how to connect everything together. It gives examples of both first-person and third-person narratives. And you know what's really cool?
Wait, tell me.
It highlights these common connector words like before, after, later on. You know those little words that kind of act like the glue that holds the whole routine together?
Oh, yeah. Without them, it would be like reading a grocery list instead of an actual story. Pretty boring.
Exactly. And here's the thing. Those connectors aren't just about grammar. They actually reflect how we mentally organize our day and, how we prioritize certain activities.
So it's not just what we do, but how we connect those actions in our minds. I'm starting to see how this gets really interesting.
Right. Like, think about it. Someone who uses before a lot might be very task-oriented, while someone who uses after might be more flexible. It's all about how we sequence our day.
So we've got the phrasal verbs, the time expressions, these all-important connector words. It's like we're building a toolkit for describing routines. But, there's another layer here I'm curious about.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. We've been talking about the how, but what about the why behind our routines?
Exactly. Our daily activities aren't random, right? I mean, they reflect something deeper, don't they? Our values, our priorities, our personalities.
You hit the nail on the head. And those seemingly mundane details, like whether someone makes tea or coffee in the morning, irons their clothes, or, packs a lunch, all those little things can suddenly become very revealing.
Okay, I'm really intrigued now. So how do we actually decode those hidden messages? What are we looking for? Like in that first article, when they mention making tea, ironing clothes, packing teaching materials, what do those little things tell us about this person?
Well, think about it. They're a teacher, they value being prepared, and they like a bit of routine in their morning. It's a glimpse into their world.
And suddenly, describing a daily routine becomes more than just a list of activities. It's like we're piecing together a puzzle, right? A puzzle that reveals something about the person and their life.
Exactly. And that's where the real fun begins.
So it sounds like we can learn a lot about someone just from how they structure their day. But, I've always wondered about those personality stereotypes linked to routines. Like, are early birds really more productive, or are night owls more creative?
Well, those are age-old questions, aren't they? And it's tempting to draw those conclusions. I mean, there's probably some truth to it, but I think it's more complicated than that.
Okay, yeah, it can't be that simple. So what else is going on there?
Well, think about it. Someone might be an early bird not because they're inherently more disciplined, but
Mm.
because they have a long commute, or maybe they have kids to get ready for school. It's not just about what they do, it's about the why behind it.
So the timing of their routine is often dictated by external factors. And those factors can tell us a lot about their life, their responsibilities, their priorities.
Absolutely. I remember those connector words we were talking about, like before and after? They can actually offer clues to those motivations. Like someone who says, before I start work, I always meditate for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That tells us something about how they manage their stress.
It's like a little peek into their coping mechanisms and how they set themselves up for the day. Interesting. But, routines aren't just about individual quirks, right? I mean, they can vary wildly across cultures, too.
Oh, absolutely. Cultural norms and values play a huge role in shaping our daily rhythms. And the language we use to describe those routines can reflect those cultural differences in some really fascinating ways.
Yeah. Like, I remember reading that in Spain, it's common to have a siesta in the afternoon. That would never fly in most American workplaces.
Exactly. And it's not just about specific activities, it's about the overall pace and structure of the day. Think about a stereotypical image of, say, a laid-back Caribbean lifestyle. Do you think their routines would be described with precise times or more relaxed terms?
Oh, definitely more relaxed. I bet they'd use phrases like around noon or later in the evening instead of at 2:15 p.m. It's like you can almost hear the steel drums and smell the jerk chicken just from the way they talk about their day.
Uh-huh, exactly. And, on the flip side, imagine someone from a fast-paced, highly structured culture like Japan. Their routine descriptions might emphasize efficiency, punctuality, and a clear separation between work time and leisure time.
It's like you can get a sense of a whole culture's rhythm just by listening to how they describe their day. That's amazing.
This makes me think about how we use routine descriptions in other contexts. Like, imagine you're meeting someone new, maybe on a date or at a networking event. Instead of asking the typical, what do you do? What if you asked, what does your ideal Saturday look like?
Oh, I love that. It's so much more engaging. And it tells you so much more about a person than just their job title. You could learn that they're an avid hiker who spends their weekends exploring national parks, or maybe they're a foodie who loves trying out new restaurants. Right. It's way more revealing and could spark some really interesting conversations. Oh, you're into hiking. I've been meaning to check out that new trail by the lake.
And suddenly, you've got a shared interest, a potential weekend adventure, all thanks to a simple question about their routine.
It's amazing how those little details can create connections, but, it goes beyond social situations too. I think understanding routines can be really helpful when you're traveling.
Oh, definitely. When you're in a new place, being able to understand local customs and daily rhythms can really enhance your experience. And it can help you avoid those awkward cultural faux pas, like not realizing that shops close for a couple of hours in the afternoon for lunch in some countries.
Or showing up for dinner at 6 p.m. when everyone else eats at 9. That's essential information.
Yeah.
It all comes down to those daily patterns, those routines that shake the rhythm of a place.
Right. It's like you're not just visiting a location, you're stepping into a story, a living, breathing narrative of how people live their lives.
It's not just about sightseeing, it's about understanding a different way of life.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so fascinating. Describing daily routines isn't just about listing activities. It's about connecting with people, appreciating different cultures, and even seeing the world in a new light.
It's like we've unlocked a secret language. And suddenly, even the most mundane activities become really interesting.
And it all starts by paying attention to the details, the language, the
Mhm.
structure. Because within those seemingly ordinary routines, there's a whole world waiting to be discovered.
It really is amazing how those everyday things, the stuff we hardly think about, can tell us so much. Like, who knew there were so many layers to talking about making coffee or waiting for the bus?
Right, it's like we've been speaking this secret language of routines all along, and now we're finally starting to understand the code.
Yeah, and the more we learn, the more fascinating it gets. We've seen how the language we use, the specific verbs, the time markers, the way we connect those actions, it all reveals something deeper. It's like we're painting a picture, not just with words, but with the entire structure of our day.
It's true. Each routine becomes a little story, a little window into a person's world, their priorities, their values.
And we get to be the detectives piecing together those clues. So for everyone listening, I hope you feel a little more confident, maybe even a little more curious about describing your own routine.
And I hope you'll also listen a little more closely to how others describe theirs, because you never know what fascinating insights you might uncover.
It's like eavesdropping on their inner world, right? And who knows, you might even discover some unexpected common ground. Maybe you both start your day with yoga or unwind with late night baking.
And those little connections can lead to friendships, collaborations, all sorts of wonderful things. And that's what makes exploring this topic so rewarding. It's not just about language, it's about connecting with people and appreciating the beauty of our shared human experience, even in its most ordinary forms.
It's about recognizing that even in those seemingly mundane routines, there's so much to learn, so much to share, so much to celebrate. So thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.